A Kentucky federal judge just ruled that 2 officers who lied in a search warrant affidavit, falsified government documents, and lied to investigators were not the actual cause of Breonna Taylor's death. Instead, this judge blamed Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, who fired one single shot in self-defense, for her death. This is why Black voters must go out and stop former President Trump from becoming president in 2024. Stay tuned right after this. Hey guys, what's up? This is attorney Chloe Corbett, also known as the Duchess of Justice. I am one half of the Defiant Lawyers, where we provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to defy this unjust legal system and nullify systemic racism. The tragic loss of life of Breonna Taylor is one of the reasons why my dad and I started this channel, to speak up against the numerous injustices, police brutality cases, and officer-involved shooting cases against Black Americans. This type of behavior has gone on in this country since we arrived, and we have yet to see the day where I believe true legislation will be passed in order to stop the senseless killing of Black Americans in this country by law enforcement and by police officers. And Breonna Taylor's case is no different. Unfortunately, the federal judge who was appointed by Ronald Reagan issued a ruling saying that the officers who lied in the search warrant affidavit and who the government alleged conspired to lie to investigators and in government documents were not responsible for the search warrant being executed and the officers on the scene who killed Breonna Taylor after her boyfriend shot one shot in self-defense. Keep in mind that these officers who executed this warrant did not announce themselves. They simply knocked on the door at night. Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend were doing what everyday Americans and Black people do in this country every single night. They were inside watching a movie. It was reported that Breonna was watching The Freedom Riders. She fell asleep just like any other American that night, and unfortunately she never woke back up. This is the tragedy that is happening and continues to happen in this country. And we felt compelled to make this video about Breonna Taylor's case because we know that this happens every month in this country and nothing has changed. But if we use our political voting power as Black Americans, we can get presidents in office who appoint federal judges and justices who care about ending racial injustice, about ending police brutality, about ending qualified immunity, about stopping prosecutorial immunity, etc. But let's get into some of the information that came out from the judge's ruling. Let's get into it. As those of you all who are familiar with this tragic loss of life, Breonna Taylor, who was age 26 in 2020, was a Black woman who was a medical worker. She was killed on March 13th, 2020. So right during the time of the George Floyd protests as well. She was killed by officers from the Louisville Metro Police Department who forced entry into her home. Breonna's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, fired one single warning shot, mistaking the police for intruders. Keep in mind that the police were executing this warrant. It was a no-knock warrant, which means they did not knock on the door and announce themselves. They merely barged into Breonna's home where she was sleeping with her boyfriend. The 3 officers who were executing this warrant claimed that they announced themselves as police before forcing entry, but Mr. Walker said he did not hear any announcement. He thought the officers were intruders and fired a single warning shot at them. The shot hit one of the officers in the leg, according to reports, and the officers fired 32 shots in return. According to reports, Walker, as we know, was unhurt, but unfortunately, Breonna Taylor, who was behind Walker, was hit by 6 bullets and died. During the incident, it was reported that one of the other officers moved to the side of the apartment and shot 10 bullets through a covered window and glass door. According to police, Breonna's home was never searched. Later that year in September, a Kentucky state grand jury indicted one of the officers on 3 counts of felony first-degree wanton endangerment for endangering Breonna's neighbors with his shots. Now notice, the state grand jury was never presented with charges related to the murder of Breonna. Why is that? Because I believe Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, who is a black conservative, who came out and released statements that, in my opinion, were defensive of the officers and did not go far enough in calling this what this is, which is a case of police brutality against a black woman. And in fact, it was reported that two of the jurors, the state jurors, released a statement saying that the grand jury was not presented with homicide charges against the officers. So on the state side, unfortunately, nothing ever came of that. A couple years later, on March 3rd, 2022, the officer who was charged with the first-degree wanton endangerment was acquitted of the charges by a state jury out of Kentucky. So nothing ever came out of the state side. So that's where the U.S. Department of Justice came in and charged the officer who was there with unconstitutional use of excessive force. And that trial started in October 2023, and it was concluded as a mistrial in November 2023. However, a retrial has been scheduled for October of this year. So we're going to be looking out for that. U.S. District Judge Charles Simpson, who dismissed 2 felony deprivation of rights under the color of law charges against James and Mieni, which basically reduced the civil rights violation charges against them to misdemeanors. The judge said it was Kenneth Walker who actually caused Breonna's death, not the police officers. That is the thinking that this federal judge, this Ronald Reagan appointee, wrote in his opinion, and why he dismissed the most serious charges against these 2 officers. He says, based on the fact allegations and the government's argument, the court finds that the warrantless entry was not the actual cause of Taylor's death. The court also concludes that the death results charge requires proof of proximate cause, and that allegations in this case show that the warrantless entry was not the proximate cause of Taylor's death. And even if it were, KW's, Kenneth Walker's, her boyfriend's decision to open fire is the legal cause of her death, it being a superseding cause. Consequently, the court will dismiss the death results charge. This is pretty extraordinary, guys. The judge is essentially blaming Kenneth Walker for Breonna's death. Not essentially, that's what he's doing. He's saying that the legal cause, the actual and proximate cause of her death, is Mr. Walker's firing back at the officers when they barged in unannounced at night. I don't know what else to say to get black voters to understand that who we have in office as president, who appoints these judges, both on these federal seats as well as the Supreme Court, can really be the difference between getting justice for black victims of police brutality and other racial injustices in this country. They are the very ones that are making these decisions. First is who is the head of the Department of Justice and deciding to present these cases to grand juries. That's important. And presidents appoint the U.S. Attorney General as well, who is over the Department of Justice, who makes decisions on which charges to take to grand juries in the first place. So we need a president who cares about these issues, 1. 2, as we know, presidents appoint these judges to oversee these cases. And if you don't have judges and justices in place who care about fairness in policing, who care about ending police brutality, these are the results that we get. So a 26-year-old woman, not accused of a crime, a medical worker, in her own home, has lost her life because of the actions and lies and now decision of white officers and a white judge. That's where we're at in today's America. And that's why getting out the vote is so important. We must stop Trump from becoming president again. Because if he becomes president, he is going to continue to appoint judges and justices who do not care or value police brutality and ending police injustice against black people. They're going to implement this Project 2025 agenda. and we have the power to stop them from doing so. So my heart just goes out for Breonna Taylor's family. I can imagine first dealing with the injustice of losing your daughter, your sister, your loved one, your friend, and then hearing this news. One, that the officer who actually shot into Breonna's home, the first one, there was a mistrial that was declared. And then now hearing that the officers who the government accuses of lying, of conspiring together to get this search warrant, to lie about what is in the search warrant, they're not going to be held responsible. In fact, a judge, a Ronald Reagan appointee, held Breonna's boyfriend responsible. We must get out and we must do something. So I was just very sad to hear this news. It was very disappointing. My heart, my thoughts, and my prayers go out to Breonna's family. I pray that they will continue to be strong in the great loss of her life. And that's where we can take up the banner to help them get justice for Breonna Taylor and other victims of police brutality as well. So I'm going to end the video on this note. I want you to go and check out a video that my dad made about our Black Agenda Advance 2026. I'm also going to be making a video about that, going into more details about how we can advance this agenda and why it is so necessary. Even with Kamala Harris being the Democratic presidential nominee, we still must push her to focus on a Black agenda that will help the Black community. So with that, thank you all for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts on this tragic loss of life by Breonna Taylor and this decision by this judge. And with that, I'll see you next time. Peace.